Hello, and welcome back to the City of Miami Gardens Beginner Chess Lessons. Today, we'll learn about the pawn and several other pieces as we progress in the videos. We'll be working with the white pawn. Due to the fact, for playing purposes, in the game of chess, white always moves first. You know that your board is set up correctly because there will always be a light colored space or on the right hand side of the board, and one would be facing you. This is how we know that this is the correct side for white setup. In our previous lesson, we learned that there are 8 pawns on the board. But for this teaching purpose of learning how to move and capture with the pawn, we will only use 1 pawn for demonstration purposes. Please pause the video at any time if you need to go back and write things down or refresh. The pawn is allowed to move 1 to 2 spaces on the first move only. Of all 8 pawns, when you're playing the game of chess, each pawn on their first move is allowed to move 1 or 2 spaces. The choice is up to you due to your playing convenience and your strategy at that time. So, you can either move 1 space vertically or 2 spaces vertically. The choice is yours, but for this demonstration purpose, we will use 2 spaces. The pawn is now located on H4 of the board. But if you do not have any numbers or letters on your board, please disregard the note-taking of letter and numbering, which is used when you are using a notebook. However, for this demonstration purposes, we will not note-take the spaces. A pawn capture moving 1 space only diagonally. This pawn can capture moving 1 space diagonally. Here it is an example of diagonal moving for the pawn. We will introduce a pawn of the opponent, the black pawn, into the game, just for demonstration purposes to show you how to capture with the pawn. The pawn must always continue on the journey moving forward vertically. And this is also a life lesson. Continue to move forward in your journey. The pawn captures diagonally, and here is an example of the pawn capturing their opponent's pawn off of the board. You take the piece and you move it here to the side or somewhere you are storing your pieces. The pawn must always continue to move forward vertically on the board. Once the pawn captures and the pawn is now located on a different row, it continues throughout the game to move forward, but only allowed to move 1 space. For an example, if the pawn make it to the other side of the board, which means you have made it to your opponent's side of the board, to the last row, that pawn may advance to a piece of choice. The only piece that the pawn may not advance to is the king. But we will not show advancing at this time. That is for a later lesson. Please revisit any video to refresh your memory. And that is how you move the pawn. Thank you.